Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. So I wanted to talk about how to reach Masters in Eternal. So again, Eternal is a separate format to Standard. Typically there are very straightforward guidelines on how to reach top 100 Masters in the Eternal format, and then again, there's two ways to reach top 100 Masters. I'll just preface by saying this. You can either climb faster than everyone else, which means that you essentially hit top 100 before there are 100 Masters level players. You are one of the first 100 players to hit Masters on your server. That makes you automatically a top 100 player. And then the other way, and again, I've seen Sunny do this, I've done this personally, it's actually very easy to do. Other streamers have done this. Essentially, you just climb more efficiently than everybody else that's playing the game. Typically what that means is that you have to hit Masters in 2 weeks of a season starting. That's usually the timeline cutoff. 2 weeks, 3 weeks at most. There will usually be 100 players Masters level by the time 3 weeks has passed. Because the thing about LOR specifically is that if you play long enough, even bad players will essentially get to Masters eventually. That's the nature of a positive win rate deck. If you play a deck and your win rate is 53%, if you play a large number of games, you will hit Masters eventually. The main difference is that a good player will win 70% of games and hit Masters much, much faster than you with less sweat, less time investment, and less time wasted if their time is valuable for life reasons or career reasons or whatever. Typically, a lot of people don't like to grind. My big thing with LOR, and the reason why I enjoyed Eternal specifically, is because I knew I wouldn't have to grind. There was only one other game, card game in existence that I was willing to grind ladder on, and that was MTG, because in MTG, or Magic the Gathering, I also knew that I could build decks with a wide enough card pool that I could guarantee a very positive win rate climb. Otherwise, I simply wouldn't do it. I hate grinding. It's a thing about me. Very low patience in general for things like that. Time wasting in online play. So first way to reach Masters, and I've kind of gone over this before, is to climb faster than everyone else. You hit Masters in 2 weeks of play with a substantial positive win rate. At least 60% is the bare minimum to accomplish that. Some people will get to Masters in 1 week if they're like a top 10 player. A top 100 player will get there in 2 weeks minimum, and then someone who's a little bit worse than that will get there in 3 weeks. Is typically the way that it goes. And then if you're terrible, it'll take you the entire season. That's the first way to reach top 100, is just being faster and more efficient with your climbing than every other player in the game. The second way to reach Masters is to grind out ladder past Masters. So you've reached Masters, you're a lower rank than everyone else, and you need to grind up to reach top 100. You are going to need to demonstrate separate techniques than the way that I'm teaching you today. Today we're talking about climbing efficiency, we're talking about win rates. That's where statistical relevance really helps you out. So this is where it becomes a lot about optimal decks and optimal piloting. It becomes about taking a competitive list and then filing it down to essentially the version of the deck that is going to work best for you. If you play Azir Aurelia and you're all about winning, you can run the Shadow Apprentice. Shadow Apprentice is a slightly thirstier Emp Army card that you can run that allows you to push for elusive lethal, and is essentially just a second Green Glade duo. Slightly thirstier, slightly more aggressive, if that's where you're at, mentally speaking, right? But then there are further things you can do. You can cut the top end and then put in more reactive cards. So the thing that Sunny did when he took my list and he saw my list, he's just like, okay, I just want to be like Shaped Stone, right? And it's like, that's fine. If you just want to be Shaped Stone and you don't like the 5-mana Blade Dance card because you think it's heavy, you think that when you're playing competitively, you just want a way to ditch your spell mana and have it get some value and push for some extra damage, especially because you're already running Emp Army, like you're running 6 landmarks, so it's not going to whiff. It's going to be a good card for you. You can just jam the Shaped Stone in this list, and like that's pretty aggressive. 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 1-drops in your shell. Like that's, yeah, that's pretty aggressive. for sure, in terms of how you want to pilot the deck. Like that would be fairly optimal in terms of the exact composition you're looking for. And then if you want, you can run the 3 Doom Keepers, and you can be on 15 one-mana cards, and like that would be super thirsty in terms of your ladder performance, and it would probably work just fine. To be honest with you, I probably wouldn't cut any of these cards specifically or ratio down on them so I can get more Doom Keepers, but maybe you make that work. And you make the call that you just want to run this deck as low to the ground as possible, as fast as possible, as aggressive as possible. When you play Aurelia and you bank the spell mana, opponent tries to Mystic Shot the Aurelia, you instantly snaps Shaped Stone and she just doesn't die. And then sometimes you just auto roll because of that, right? So like you could do this, and this would be your uber fast, I want to climb as sweaty and fast and hard as possible and hit top 100 masters before anyone else does. This would do that for you. Another way to do it is obviously traditional aggro, either Ziggs Poppy or Ziggs Vex. I have to do testing in terms of whether I'd rather be on old Ziggs Poppy or the new version of Ziggs Vex. They have advantages and disadvantages that are worth exploring, but yeah, that's just going to take time and experimentation, and the only way I'll get valid stats is if I try them each out on ladder and then compare them against one another. But either way, this is going to work fine for you, right? This is already an exceptionally thirsty and aggressive deck, and the only reason why I made this swap between House Spider Poppy to Vex is because I saw that a lot of people were essentially countering this deck just by their card inclusions. They were naturally countering the deck, and that's something that I didn't want to basically succumb to when I was playing the list. It's like, well, I don't want to, if I'm going to get countered by going wide because the opponent just plays a bunch of chumpers or removes Poppy on curve or what have you, if I'm just going to get countered anyway, then I'd rather play the high tempo card instead of the gets value on attack card. And like that was the whole thinking process there. So like as a competitive player, those are the kinds of decisions you're making. Is like, this is a competitive deck already, but am I on the Ziggs? I mean, am I on the Poppy or am I on the Vex? Am I on the Grenadier or am I on the House Spider? That's like the full extent of your thinking there for that deck. Pretty straightforward. And then you're looking at Nora Swain, right? And you're making the call that, okay, I want more hard removal for Eddie. So I'm going to run 2 Kashuri Swipe as my tech. Instead of running the 1 counter spell, the 1 stun, I just want the 2 swipes because I'm going to run into Eddie. Eddie plays big stuff. I want to have infinite kill cards. I just want my deck to be nothing but kill cards and cycling power and chumpers and then more kill cards and then Turbo Swain boat, right? That's all I want my deck to be. You can make that call if you think that that's going to be more efficient for you. So like already we have 1, 2, 3 possible decks that you can micro swap between for very strong laddering. You have straightforward aggro, you have rally based aggro, you have the best control deck in the game. Some people will honestly want to be on the matron spam, so absolutely. If you want to run matron spam, run matron spam. And that's where going big is your key to success. If you ladder most successfully by going over the heads of your opponents, do that. Play that deck, get really good at it, ratio it to be optimal into the current micro meta that you're facing. That's, again, I don't have any experience because I'm probably the only person in the entire LOR community that has not played a single game of Elder Dragon. I don't like the deck or the archetype, but I keep it on hand just so I know what I'm dealing with. But yeah, I'm the only person probably in the LOR community that has not become competitive through the use of Eddie as a crutch. I basically got there off of Aurelia, Ziggs Poppy, Nora Swain, elusives from Swim, just like a lot of legacy LOR power that has continued to carry me to this day to being one of the best Eternal players in the format without ever bothering with the Eddie crutch. Other decks that you could possibly look at in terms of hard carrying you to top 100 masters. Some version of Pirate Aggro. Yeah, this isn't it. But yeah, typically there is some version of Pirate Aggro that is very competitive in terms of pure stats. So obviously Pirate Aggro having some things that are different from it, from a Ziggs Poppy. Typically, it also goes wide. It goes wide with 12 one-drops, or, 14 one-drops in this case. Holy smokes, like that's a lot of one-drops. Goes wide with 14 one-drops, plus House Spider, plus Mirai Warden, which is basically a second House Spider. Misfortune, Noxian Fervor, Twisted Fate, Zap, Eye of Noctoboros, and then Decimate. So just like go wide board spam, plus burn finish. It's essentially the exact same as Ziggs Poppy, but the champ package is different. Misfortune pings when all your small stuff swings, and then TF obviously allows you to ping or draw or stun something scary or whatever. These are both hyper aggressive and hyper efficient climbing decks. Basically, Pirate Aggro, Ziggs Poppy, and then Eddie, Nora Swain, and Azir Aurelia. These are all very, very good format decks that can carry you to top 100 Masters with a minimum time investment. Like I'm talking like 2 days, 4 days, 6 days of hard climbing tops, sporadically throughout the day whenever it's convenient for you. Like after work, on weekends, whenever you think you can get there, you're going to do pretty well with that. Stuff I don't recommend. I don't recommend memes. I'm sorry, I can't recommend a meme deck for efficient climbing. I simply can't. They tend to get hard stuck diamond in the Eternal format specifically. Obviously in Standard, they win like 80% of games, and they do very well in that format. I can't recommend memes or janks for Eternal because statistically, they are not relevant for this format and for this ladder situation. So like, I'll give you an example. One of my favorite meme decks in the game, in terms of flavor, is of course Prize Fight, right? So you're playing all in Jack's Prize Fight. Not Jack, sorry. Jack. The other Jack. You're playing Jack Prize Fight, right? So of course you're on the landmark, you're generating a crap ton of coins, and then you're like, oh yeah, this, and then that, and then this, and oh yeah. Just in terms of like the way that the deck functions, and coin, does it not include the draw for me? There we go. Right, you're on Jack set, but your entire control package is all based on Prize Fight iterations. And that's like your entire deck, right? And you got Risky Venture for 4 mana. Ooh, least efficient removal in the entire game. 4 mana to deal 2, or deals 3 to something now. I guess it's a slightly better card than it used to be. It used to deal 2 for 3 mana and then put 2 coins in hand. Now it deals 3 for 4 mana and puts 2 coins in hand. Like, I think that's slightly better, but it's still not ideal. You're probably on Mixologist if you're not Smooth Brain, and then you're probably on Place Your Bets. I don't know. How much do you want to meme, right? And then you want some like draw in there. How much do you want to meme exactly? It's basically your call in terms of like exactly what you want to do to make this deck efficient or worth using. But like I wouldn't recommend this. Even if you steal one game with this in quick play, this exact, essentially Sunny Pit Champion deck, even if you steal one game with Pit Champion, and you're just like, oh, best card ever made. It lets me reduce the life total of all creatures that I strike with, but it also reduces the life total of your creatures. You just like spent time and resources to flock enable your own Jack. How bad does that feel? And like that's your whole deck. You just built an entire deck that is turbo weak to one of the highest tier control decks in the game, namely Swain. And like even if it's not Nora Swain and it's just like Swain something else, like someone's brewing something that's Swain related, they're still going to be on triple flock, triple disintegrate. They could be on like Annie Swain for all I care. They could be on like some sort of meme deck, but at least they're playing good cards in their meme deck and you're playing bad cards. I can't recommend this approach. You'll take a game or two because you're just running weird stuff. No one's going to play around Risky Venture. No one's going to play around, prize fight spam. No one's going to do that. But even in the case where no one knows what you're playing and no one knows what you're playing, what they're playing around, you still might just lose because the other person's deck is better. And that's a bad deck. Like, if you can't win games with Kinder Surprise memes, just out of, you know, pure unexpected value, out of the opponent not knowing what to do and what to play against, if you can't win in optimal scenarios like that, where you have essentially peeker's advantage, as they would call it in a first-person shooter, in LOR, there is such a thing as mystery poker or bluffer's advantage. If the opponent doesn't know what you're playing, they don't know what to play around. That's the optimal scenario for any meme deck. But even when you have that optimal scenario, you still might lose an Eternal because Eternal decks are that good. This isn't standard where the difference between a good deck and a bad deck is something like 4% margin or something. This is Eternal, where the difference between a good deck and a bad deck is a 10% margin, right? Like, it's like a 15% margin. You know, we have decks that win like 68% of games, and I'm not talking like anecdotal statistics. I'm talking like hundreds of games played and they win 68% of games. Like, that's the level of competition we're talking about. Do you really want a Jack's prize fight into matron spam? I don't think you do. I don't want a Jack's prize fight into Eddie. That sounds like a nightmare. You're just making their life easier for them, right? Like, it's not going to do you any favors. So yeah, even in optimal scenarios, this is bad. Don't play this. I cannot advise you to play that in Eternal. So yeah, I think, you know, another thing that you could play would be to get really, really good with a Temple iteration. Pick a version of Temple that you are most comfortable with. It's either going to be essentially a ping spam shell like this that is going to be competitive for you in Eternal, or it's good old-fashioned Turbo TF Temple, and that's going to be, you know, advantageous for you. Like, I like to play mine a little memeier. I like to go a little heavy. I like to run Hex Obliterator, Rocket Barrage, Ruined Rex, really just like fun stuff in my Temple deck. And the funny thing is that even with like something like Candlelit Prayer, which is not considered a good story, I'm like, I will absolutely mow the lawn with people with this Temple deck, in terms of a pure control package, because it's very, very good. It's very strong, and it's very efficient, and it has infinite card value, and it has infinite burn lethal value. It has everything. Like, it's such a good deck. But again, this is a harder sell because people would rather be on the ping spam low commitment version for highly competitive games, and I'd rather be like, nah, I'll just risk the the 5 mana Hex Obliterator into a counter spell. I don't care. Or, you know, the 4 mana Rocket Barrage. I'll just do that. It'll work out fine. Definitely a little memeier on my side of things. But yeah, these are the kinds of decks that you want to play. These are the kinds of decks that you want to get really good at, and these are the kind of decks that you want to climb with. Now, if you are committed to brewing something that is off meta, my best advice as a highly competitive Eternal player is to run competitive cards in your meme deck. Just like, that's the kind of old school Hearthstone tech. Like, if anyone's been playing CCGs for a long time, you know that the best way to be competitive is to run competitive cards. So I'll give you an example. Bandle Tree. One player who ran off meta and did really well in Eternal was running Bandle Tree. I'm not sure the mana, but I don't use it that often as a deck. You're going to be on this for sure. I think they upgrade. Yeah, they increased the... Well, it's 3 mana. Bandle Tree. 3 mana Bandle Tree. But even in that case, you're going to be on like Pokestick. You're going to be on Flockaroni, Pepperoni. And like, I would just build this out like Nora Swain, to be honest. Like, why not? I would literally just like... If I was to play like highly competitive Bandle Tree and try to be like as low meme as possible, I'd probably just build it as close to Nora Swain as humanly possible and not really... Well, you got to include some cards for Bandle Tree, right? But then again, Bandle Tree kind of flips itself. So that's the one thing about Bandle Tree. So like, it's really up to you how much multi-region stuff you want to include. But yeah, essentially the idea is that even if you are running a meme deck like Bandle Tree, you can basically just win off the likes of, you know, Flock and Pokestick, right? You just run Flock and Pokestick with Bandle Tree, and you'll do okay. Multi-region? No, that doesn't work. You just have to physically go through and pick all your multi-region cards, unfortunately. You don't have a choice. But, yeah, that is kind of the best advice I can give any player who is looking to meme with a, looking to meme with a non-meme deck, is that you take your meme, which is Bandletree, but then you also just jam like Ziggs and Vex into it, and then you run Bandletree. And it's like, well, these are multi-region cards. They qualify. They're also just good tempo cards. And you also put in Mayor. Mayor goes in for sure, because Mayor pulls you out a multi-region card, right? So like all of a sudden, this is just looking like good stuff. It's just the good stuff Bandletree deck in terms of like the right way to build decks, the right way to play the game. I've also seen Gnar, because Gnar gives you a pokey stick, so there's a little bit of control there. I think the Vex is probably better for the most part. Also gives you an excuse to run Glare, and Glare is just more cycle power, more ping power, so you're also on the Glare, because why not? And yeah, all of a sudden you're just kind of doing good stuff. You're just doing good stuff for the sake of Bandletree, and obviously your Glare, your pokey stick is going to get you through your deck faster, so you can get to your combo win con. So like, yeah, absolutely, Bandletree is a competitive meme because Bandletree lets you run the good Nora Swain cards, namely Pokestick and Flock, and potentially Glare, potentially Vex, and potentially Ziggs, and just like good cards, and then Bandle City Mayor, etc. So like already this looks highly competitive just based off the value of the individual card packages. That's the best way to build a meme if you're like dedicated to the idea. If you want a top 100 with a meme, build a deck that is already somewhat competitive, right? So like set Trundle. If you want to play a version of Ramp that isn't Eddie Ramp, this is an established deck. Set Trundle is an established deck that does work for you and has been proven to be valuable and powerful regardless of what anyone else says or does. Because the good cards are there, right? Your Ramp cards are there. Ramp is good. Your Avalanche is there. Avalanche is good. Faces of the Old One is there. Faces is good. Smooth Mixologist is there. Catalyst, Harsh Winds, Place Your Bets for Draw. Arguably one of the best draw cards in the game. Set is there. Trundle is there to stall out. Well, Mysticism. And then just a whole bunch of removal stuff. Hit the Stairs, Buried Nice, Old Timer. And then, yeah, She Who Wanders for the aggro matchup, and then Feel the Rush to get out big sets and big trundles. Just play good cards. And then it's not a meme anymore, it's just a good deck, right? That's kind of my best possible advice. We haven't seen Draven Rumble much lately, but the thing that makes Draven Rumble playable is that it just runs good cards, right? Blade Squire, Draven's biggest fan, to tutor out the Draven. Zonite Urchin, Reborn Grenadier, Boom Baboon, Fallen Rider, Mystic Shot, Get Excited, Might, Augmented Clockling, Blowback, Survival Skills, and Rage Fire Spitter. Like, these are just good cards, right? Nothing about them is going to set your hair on fire. They're just decent, powerful cards. They're powerful on their own, therefore you can run them together and make a deck out of it. That's basically the whole concept of efficient, competitive deck building. And this was done with Sundisk as well. We know that Sundisk isn't competitive. So how do you make Sundisk competitive? You make it into a Renekton Azir mid-range Shurima Allegiance shell. Like, that's what it is. Like, this isn't a Sundisk deck anymore. You don't care about Sundisk because there's no protection for Sundisk. There's no Turbo Sundisk. There's no Zerath. Like, all that stuff is gone. It's just mid-range Shurima good stuff. And then if Sundisk flips, great. If it doesn't flip, we'll just make Sundisk cards with Glory's Call anyway. This is optimal Sundisk. It's optimal Sundisk because it runs good cards in a mid-range construction, and it's not trying to be a meme anymore. It's taken the meme and it's de-memified it. This is the best thing you can do in Eternal. Period, full stop. So shout-outs to the Sundisk guy, right? If I made the #1 highest played deck in Eternal, and I made also the only version of competitive Rise in Eternal, which was a meme until I kind of slightly adjusted it for the new meta, then, the guy that upgraded Sundisk did the same thing for Sundisk. He took the meme and he de-memified it. And when the guy wanted to be off meta with Nora Swain by making a Vandal Tree deck, he still ran, you know, he cut the Swain and he cut the Nora, but he kept things like your common sense Phlox, your common sense Disintegrates, your common sense Pokey Sticks, all of that stuff that needs to be in a Vandal City Noxus deck was still there. Because he's not dumb, you still play the good cards. This is Eternal King, signing out.